Jay put this in front of us and said, hey, what if all we did was made a commitment to learn and retain and use the people's names that God has put right around us? What if that's all we did? And so as pastors, we decided to do that in our little group. We said, yeah, we can do that. I'm going to learn and retain and use neighbors' names. So I made that commitment with that group of people there. And I remember it was 2 days later, I'm sitting outside in front of in my driveway. I'm looking across, and I look over and to the left, and it's one of those blank squares. And I knew right away when I decided to do this, and just the same thing that a lot of you are thinking right now, if I do this, it's going to mean I'm going to have a number of mildly awkward conversations. Or maybe they're just going to be really awkward, depending on how long you've lived next to these people. And you could have, I had this thought I'll just go look in their mailbox while they're not at home. Or there's a next door white pages, and you can just see a whole Google map. It takes the magic out of this. So I'm sitting there in my driveway, and I'm thinking, this is it. He's mowing his lawn, and this is my chance. And before I could even take the first step, I had this thought. I thought, this is going to be weird. And I go, I can't go talk to him in the middle. I'll just make up something to do in my yard. And then when he gets, I'm like, that's more weird. And then I actually had this thought. I thought, I'll just go back into my house. And I bet when I come out, he'll be done. And that thought was out there enough, and it was so desperate of a way to get out of it that I just stopped myself in the middle, and I just took a step. I remember taking the first step down my driveway. And I walked down my driveway, and I kept my head down. And because he's looking at me, he's like, what are you doing? This isn't an emergency. You're not running. And I walk up, and he just lets go of the mower. And I looked at him, and I said, hey, man. And that was my name for him. And my other neighbor was Bro, and I kept them totally separate. And I thought that was very neighborly of me. I said, this is really embarrassing. I've lived next to you now for 18 months. I've met you 3 times, and I forgot your name. And I said, Dave. I said, my name's Dave, and he said something horrible. He's like, I know. And he's like, I know. And he shakes my hand, and we talked for 20 seconds, and his wife, Jan. And then I did something really important. I went back inside my house, and this thing that was sitting on a napkin on our fridge, and I just wrote down Matt and Jan. And after about 6 weeks, this whole thing was filled in. And there's all kinds of white noise on my refrigerator. But for some reason, I just kept looking at this. And these people went from people that drove certain types of cars and had a certain number of kids to real people with real names and real stories. And they started to get inside of my thoughts. They started to get inside of my prayers. And I just started because I took away that first obstacle, because I took one small step, with some of them, it caused me to start taking the next step, and the next step, and the next step. And because I started to use their name when I saw them, things started to change. And it went from, hey, man, to, hey, Matt, to, hey, Matt, did you see the end of that game? Do you see what happened? Can you believe, we got Peyton Manning from the Colts? Sorry, if that's painful for some of you in the room. To the next thing was, hey, I've just got this thing in my garage. I just need to move a certain number of, 10 feet. To, hey, you guys are going to be watching the game, and we're going to be, let's just throw some stuff on the grill. And by the way, each one of these is mildly awkward. It's mildly awkward to invite somebody into your home for the first time. But the payoff is huge. You get disproportionate results. It's mildly awkward to admit that you don't know somebody's name. But the difference between not knowing somebody's name and knowing it is that person being a stranger or an acquaintance. It's a big, big deal. It's mildly awkward to have somebody in your home, or my neighbors, I would go, hey, your son's car is back there all the time now. Did he move back in? How's that going? But when you're building off of another small step, it's normal, right? It's normal. And for me, so much of momentum is just getting started, right? So for me, taking that first step propelled me into the next step and the next and the next with some of my neighbors. Some of my neighbors don't want to be my friends. Some of my neighbors are really busy. and they've got their kids, and they're in a ton of sports and activities, and they got to like run around to practice and do the carpool thing, and then pick up fast food on the way home, and then come in late at night, and then get their garage door up and get their garage door down, and then like get into their house and then detox from everything they went through that day, and then do that again and again and again and again. And I have a ton of grace for that, because that's how most of my neighbors experience me for most of the time that I've lived around them. And yet I've learned this: some of my neighbors are dying for a real relationship. Some of my neighbors, and they're not even dying, well, that's maybe too strong a word, they're dying for something more of depth than what they're currently experiencing. I asked my neighbor a while back, I just said, he was taught, their kids are a little bit older than ours, and I just said, hey, what are you guys learning about parenting? And he gave me like 7 minutes of just here you go, here's what I wish I would have done differently. And then we like split, and he was gonna walk one way, and I'm gonna walk the other, and we started walking the other way, and he turned back, he goes, hey, Dave. He goes, I don't talk like this with anybody. And at that moment, I was just like, oh my goodness. I'm assuming, and I bought into this myth, like in the church world, like I thought most people have people that like they talk with about things that really matter. If there's a crisis, if they're struggling, and when I've been on church staffs and on teams, you know, you just gravitate towards certain people like that. Or we hope that our people are in small groups where that stuff takes place. Here's the real truth: most of our neighbors, all they have is like their dysfunctional family stuff that we all have, or their surfacey work stuff, and they don't have anything of depth. And if we as believers will just live like a half step below the surface, like just a half step below the surface, what we give them is like new life. It's something that a lot of them have been craving.